In the shining heart of the galaxy there was a palace built on a floating world of crystal. The palace belonged to the Empress, the most respected ruler in many star systems. She was kind but also strong, and every creature in the galaxy admired her. Yet inside the great palace there was a secret that only her closest helpers knew. The Empress was also a mother, and her children were no ordinary children. They were baby dragons. These dragons were not like the giant beasts found in old human stories. They were smaller, almost the size of ponies, but their wings glittered like silver fire and their scales gleamed in colors no paint could match. Each one was full of energy, curious about everything and quick to show their feelings. When they were happy, they made the air sparkle with tiny bursts of light. But when they were upset, their growls made even strong guards step back nervously. The Empress loved her baby dragons dearly. She called them her treasures of the stars. She wanted them to grow up surrounded by care, laughter, and gentle teaching. But the Empress was very busy with her duties. She had meetings with councils, messages from planets, and decisions that shaped the lives of billions. She could not always stay in the nursery even though she wished she could. So she began looking for the best babysitters in the galaxy. She thought it would be simple. After all, many noble families had helpers to care for their young. Surely there were experts who could keep her dragon children safe and happy. The nursery was a grand room with tall glass windows that looked out into space. Stars drifted past like glowing lanterns, and the floor was soft with clouds spun from rare fabrics. In one corner, piles of toys glittered, shaped like comets and moons. The Empress made sure the nursery had everything her children could want. But even the most beautiful room did not change the fact that caring for baby dragons was not easy. The first babysitter was from a tall insect species. He had long arms, delicate wings, and a voice that could hum like a harp. The Empress believed his gentle songs might soothe her children. At first, the baby dragons tilted their heads and listened, but soon their playful energy took over. They jumped, flapped their own wings, and filled the air with small bursts of smoke. The insect babysitter tried to keep singing, but when one dragon let out a loud squeal of joy, the sound made his antennae shake so much that he ran out of the room. The Empress sighed. She brought in another babysitter, this time from the ice moon of a distant star. This sitter was fluffy and round, with soft blue fur and a calm voice. She tried to teach the dragons a quiet game, rolling shiny stones across the floor. For a moment the dragons followed the game, but they grew excited too quickly. They leaped and sent the stones flying in every direction. The babysitter's fur puffed in fright and she hurried away, leaving the dragons bouncing with restless energy. More babysitters arrived in the days that followed. Some were clever, some were playful, and some were very brave. A glowing jellyfish alien floated gently in the air, trying to entertain the dragons with shapes of light. A creature with 4 arms tried to build towers of blocks to amuse them. A tall bird-like alien tried to read them stories with dramatic voices. But no matter what the babysitters tried, the baby dragons always reacted in the same way. They roared, they flapped, they tumbled, and they made the room far too wild. One by one, every sitter left. The Empress began to feel worried. She stood at the door of the nursery one evening, watching her children roll happily in a pile of star-shaped pillows. They were healthy, strong, and full of life, yet they were also too much for anyone else to handle. If no babysitter could stay, how would she balance her duties as ruler with her role as mother? Her advisors noticed her concern. They offered lists of more names, each one a highly trained caregiver from a faraway world. Still, the Empress could not forget the faces of those who had already fled. She wondered if the problem was not the babysitters but something else. Perhaps her children needed a kind of care that no alien expert could give. Perhaps they needed something simpler, something closer to the heart. The nursery grew quiet that night as the baby dragons finally curled up to sleep. Their tiny wings folded neatly against their sides, and faint sparks of light floated above them like gentle fireflies. The Empress stood by the window, looking out into the endless stars. She whispered a promise to her children. She would not give up. Somewhere in the wide galaxy there must be someone who could bring laughter instead of fear, someone who could make her little dragons feel calm and joyful. The search was not over. It had only just begun. The palace gates opened again the next morning. Another line of hopeful babysitters had arrived. Each of them believed they could succeed where others had failed. The Empress welcomed them kindly. for she still hoped that one of them would understand her baby dragons. She wanted nothing more than to see her children cared for with patience and joy. The first to enter the nursery was the tall insect alien who had returned with new ideas. He carried a harp made of crystal strings shining like water. He believed that a calm song played on a real instrument would soothe the restless little dragons. As he stepped into the nursery, the baby dragons were tumbling across the soft cloud floor. Their tiny claws made squeaky sounds on the smooth fabric. The insect alien placed the harp before him and began to play. The notes floated gently, like the sound of rain falling on leaves. For a moment, the dragons paused. Their sparkling eyes followed the rising and falling notes. One of them tilted its head and hummed softly, almost in rhythm. The alien smiled with pride. Perhaps this time he had found the secret, but the peace did not last long. The smallest dragon leaped forward, curious about the shiny harp. He sniffed it, then tapped it with his claw. The strings snapped with a loud twang. Startled, the alien stumbled backward. The other dragons, thinking it was a new game, rushed to the harp and struck the strings all at once. The sound turned sharp and loud, and the insect alien covered his ears. He fled from the room, leaving the harp behind. The dragons bounced happily, thinking they had invented a new noisy game. Later that day, the Empress welcomed a different sitter. This one was from the Ice Moon again, though she was not the same fluffy helper as before. This sitter was tall and slim, with sparkling blue eyes and a slow, steady voice. She carried a small basket of glowing snowballs. These snowballs never melted, even in the warm air of the palace. She believed they would distract the dragons and give them something safe to chase. She rolled the first snowball across the floor. The dragons squeaked with delight and darted after it. They batted the ball back and forth, their wings flapping with excitement. The sitter clapped her hands gently, pleased that her idea was working. The game seemed perfect, and for a while, laughter filled the nursery. But the dragons were clever, and their energy grew too great. Instead of chasing one ball, they wanted to chase them all. The sitter released more and more snowballs until the floor was covered in glowing orbs. The dragons spun in circles, slipping, sliding, and bouncing into each other. Their wings tangled, their tails bumped, and the snowballs scattered in every direction. The sitter grew nervous as the nursery turned into a storm of rolling light. She slipped on a snowball herself and tumbled to the ground. With a flustered cry, she hurried out, leaving the glowing orbs behind. The dragons rolled happily among the snowballs, unaware that yet another sitter had run away. By evening, the Empress allowed one more helper to try. This time it was a glowing jellyfish alien. The sitter floated into the nursery with long tendrils shining in soft colors. The tendrils swirled in patterns, forming shapes of stars, moons, and comets. The dragons stopped their play and stared in wonder. The glowing patterns filled the air like a gentle dream. For the first time, the nursery was calm. The dragons lay on their bellies watching the light show. Their eyes grew wide with fascination. The Empress felt hope rising in her heart. Perhaps this sitter was the right one. The jellyfish floated lower and began weaving the shapes into little pictures. A star turned into a flower. A comet turned into a playful fish. The dragons made small chirps of delight. The Empress smiled, thinking that her search might finally be over. But baby dragons are curious by nature. The oldest one crept closer, trying to touch the glowing tendrils. The jellyfish sitter moved back quickly, nervous that the sparks from the dragon's scales might hurt her. Another dragon joined, then another. Soon all of them were following, flapping their wings and reaching out with their little claws. The jellyfish panicked and rose higher, but the dragons leaped and tumbled after her. The careful light shapes broke apart, and the nursery was filled with a chase instead of calm. The sitter rushed out of the nursery, glowing in alarm. The dragons landed in a pile on the floor, laughing in their own dragon way. One by one, every sitter had failed again. The insect alien left his broken harp. The snow sitter left glowing orbs scattered everywhere, and the jellyfish left a trail of fading light. The nursery looked less like a playroom and more like the aftermath of a wild festival. The Empress stood quietly at the doorway. She did not scold her children, for she knew they were only being themselves. She also did not scold the sitters, for she knew they had tried their best. Instead, she wondered what it truly meant to care for her little dragons. Perhaps the answer was not about skill or tricks. Perhaps it was about something simpler. Her children curled up again, yawning after their busy day. Their scales glimmered softly as they drifted to sleep. The Empress whispered to herself that tomorrow she would try again. Somewhere in the wide galaxy, someone must exist who could see the dragons not as trouble but as children who needed love. She only had to keep searching. News traveled quickly in the galaxy. Messages sped across space on beams of light, and soon every planet knew about the Empress and her unusual problem. The grand ruler of many star systems could not find anyone to care for her own children. Even the strongest and wisest alien babysitters had all failed in the nursery of the baby dragons. On a quiet blue planet far from the shining palace, a small human family listened to the story. They lived in a little town where the sky was clear and fields stretched wide. The father was a farmer. The mother baked bread for the neighbors, and their daughter Mira loved to play under the tall trees. Mira was curious about everything. She often asked questions that made her parents smile. Why do birds sing in the morning? Why do stars twinkle at night? Why do stories make people laugh or cry? She liked to draw, to sing, and to invent silly games with her friends. Most of all, she liked to help anyone who seemed lonely. One evening, as her parents listened to a broadcast from the stars, Mira sat nearby with her crayons. The voice from the machine told the tale of the Empress and her dragon children. It explained how every alien sitter had run away, how the nursery was filled with restless energy, and how the Empress was still searching for help. Mira stopped coloring and looked up. "The dragons are only babies," she said softly. "Why is everyone afraid of them?" Her mother shook her head. "Because baby dragons are not like kittens or puppies. They are full of fire and surprise. They frighten those who do not understand them." Her father chuckled. "Even the bravest aliens cannot handle them, Mira. It is not work for a little child." But Mira did not agree. She pressed her crayon against the paper and drew a picture of a dragon with big round eyes and a smile. "Maybe they do not need someone strong," she said. "Maybe they just need someone who wants to be their friend." Her parents exchanged glances. They thought Mira's words were sweet, but they did not think she was serious. After all, what could a small girl do that trained alien sitters could not? Still, Mira kept thinking about the dragons. That night, as she lay in bed, she whispered to herself that she wished she could meet them. She imagined sitting in the nursery, showing the baby dragons her silly drawings and making them laugh instead of roar. The next morning, Mira's chance came. A message from the Empress was shared across the galaxy. It said, "If there is anyone, no matter where they are from, who believes they can care for my children, let them come. My doors are open." Mira ran to her parents with shining eyes. "The Empress is asking everyone," she said. "That means she's asking me too." Her mother laughed gently. "Mira, you are only a child." Her father frowned. "The journey is far, and the palace is filled with leaders and guards. It is no place for a little girl." But Mira's voice was steady. "I do not want to be a leader. I do not want to be a guard. I only want to be a friend to the dragons." For a long moment her parents were silent. They saw how serious she was. Mira's heart was not filled with fear. It was filled with kindness. In her eyes was the same light that had carried human explorers across oceans and into the sky. At last her father sighed. "If the Empress truly welcomes anyone, then perhaps you should try. But you must promise to be careful." Her mother hugged her. "Remember, dragons are children too. Be gentle, be patient, and maybe they will listen." Soon Mira prepared for the journey. She did not pack much. She carried a small basket with crayons, paper, and a few toys she loved. She thought the dragons might like to see them. She also brought a soft blanket she had since she was a baby, hoping the dragons might feel comfort if they cuddled near it. When the starship arrived to carry her, the neighbors gathered in surprise. They had never seen such a young traveler. But Mira only smiled and waved. She was not afraid. She was excited. As the ship lifted into the sky, Mira pressed her face to the window. The fields of her home grew small, then vanished under clouds. Stars appeared brighter and closer than she had ever seen. She thought about the dragons waiting in the nursery. She wondered if they were lonely, if they wished someone would laugh with them. She promised herself that when she arrived, she would do everything she could to make them giggle. Far away, in the crystal palace of the Empress, the baby dragons curled restlessly in their nursery. They had no idea that across the galaxy, a small human girl was on her way to meet them, and she carried not fear or worry but crayons, paper, and the hope of friendship. The starship sailed across the galaxy, faster than clouds moving in the wind. Mira sat by the window almost the entire time. her eyes wide as she watched stars drift past like shining lanterns. Sometimes she saw other ships shaped like fish, birds, or even floating seashells. She wondered if those travelers had also heard about the Empress and her baby dragons. After many days, the ship slowed and approached the floating world of crystal. From space, the palace shimmered like a jewel, with towers that sparkled and bridges that glowed in rainbow colors. Mira pressed her hands to the glass and whispered, "It is like a dream." When the ship landed, the grand doors of the palace opened. Guards in silver armor stood tall, and advisors in long robes came to greet her. They looked surprised when they saw that the new guest was only a small human girl. "Is this truly the one who answered the call?" one advisor asked. "Yes," the pilot said. "Her name is Mira. She says she wishes to help." The advisors frowned, but the Empress herself soon appeared. She walked with grace, her crown shining softly in the light of the crystal walls. She looked at Mira carefully, not with unkindness but with curiosity. "You are very small," the Empress said gently, "and yet you have traveled very far. Do you truly believe you can calm my children?" Mira held her basket close and nodded. "I do not know if I can calm them," she answered honestly, "but I would like to be their friend." The Empress studied her face, then gave a small smile. "Very well. You may try, but do not be afraid if they roar or flap their wings, many before you have run away." "I will not run," Mira said. The Empress led her through long halls filled with soft light. Finally, they reached a tall door that glowed faintly, for beyond it was the nursery of the baby dragons. The Empress opened it slowly, and warm air filled with tiny sparks drifted out. Inside, the dragons were awake. Their scales gleamed like gems, green, blue, gold, and silver. Their wings shimmered, and their eyes glowed like lanterns in the dark. They were tumbling across the cloud floor, chasing each other in circles, squeaking and huffing with energy. The moment they noticed the door, they stopped. Their heads turned, and 4 pairs of bright eyes stared at Mira. The room grew quiet. Mira stepped inside. She did not hurry. She did not hide. She walked to the middle of the nursery, set down her basket, and sat on the floor. The dragons blinked, puzzled. Every other sitter had tried to sing, juggle, or chase them at once. But this small human girl simply sat down and waited. From her basket, Mira pulled out a piece of paper and a crayon. She began to draw. Her hand moved slowly, shaping a round body, 2 big eyes, and a long, wavy tail. She did not look up right away, but she could feel the dragons watching. When she finished, she turned the paper around. "Look," she said in a cheerful voice. "It is a dragon." The drawing showed a silly creature with big crossed eyes, a wide smile, and tiny wings. It looked nothing like the proud young dragons in the room, but everything about it was funny. For a long moment, the dragons only stared. Then one of them, the smallest silver one, made a strange sound. It was half a chirp and half a laugh. The others twitched their wings, curious. Encouraged, Mira drew another picture. This time the dragon had a crown too big for its head, so heavy it was tipping sideways. She showed the picture and giggled at her own drawing. The golden dragon gave a little snort as if trying not to laugh. Mira kept going. She drew dragons sneezing flowers, dragons with long spaghetti tails, dragons wearing shoes far too large for them. With every new picture, her giggles grew louder, and slowly the dragons joined in. Their squeaks and chuckles filled the air until the whole nursery echoed with laughter. The Empress, watching from the doorway, covered her mouth in surprise. Never before had her children laughed this way. Their roars had frightened every sitter. Yet here they were, rolling on their backs, kicking their little feet and giggling at the silly drawings of one small human child. When the laughter softened, Mira pulled a toy from her basket. It was a simple ball made of cloth painted with bright colors. She rolled it gently across the floor. The green dragon tilted his head, then tapped the ball back with his nose. The ball rolled toward Mira again. She clapped her hands happily. The dragons crowded closer, curious now, no longer fierce. They nudged the ball, passed it to each other, and even brought it back to Mira when it rolled too far. Soon the game grew lively, but it stayed playful, not wild. The dragons were not trying to scare or test her. They were simply enjoying themselves. As the game slowed, the dragons curled near Mira, their wings folded neatly. The smallest one rested its head on her lap. Mira smiled and patted its scales. They were warm and smooth, like polished stones under the sun. The Empress stepped inside quietly. She looked at her children, then at Mira. For the first time, her heart felt calm. She whispered, You have done in 1 hour what no other sitter could do in many days." Mira looked up and said softly, "They only wanted to laugh." The Empress nodded, her eyes warm. She knew then that this little human girl was not just a visitor. She was the answer her children had been waiting for. The nursery of the Crystal Palace had never sounded so alive. For many days the air had been filled with restless squeaks, huffs, and small roars that made everyone nervous. But now new sounds filled the room. The baby dragons were laughing. Their voices rose and fell in bright little bursts like bells ringing in the wind. Mira sat on the soft floor with her crayons spread out around her. Paper sheets covered the ground, each one filled with silly dragon pictures. Some showed dragons with giant noses. Some showed dragons tripping over their own tails. One picture even showed a dragon wearing glasses that were much too big. Each time Mira held up a new drawing, the dragons squeaked with joy and rolled onto their sides, giggling until their wings shook. The smallest dragon, the silver one, had the loudest laugh. It curled into a ball and rocked back and forth, chirping at the silly faces Mira drew. The green dragon liked to poke the drawings with its claw, as if checking if they were real. The golden dragon preferred to copy Mira by drawing in the soft clouds on the floor with its tail. The blue dragon simply leaned against Mira's shoulder, making happy little hums. Mira was delighted. She clapped her hands and said, "You see, you are not scary at all. You are funny and sweet." The dragons tilted their heads as if they understood. Their eyes, which once glowed with mischief, now shone with warmth. They no longer seemed like wild creatures no one could manage. They seemed like children who had finally found a friend. The Empress stood at the doorway, her crown gleaming in the gentle light. She had watched quietly, her heart full of amazement. Never had she seen her children so calm, so playful, and so open. She stepped into the room, careful not to disturb the moment. Mira noticed her and waved. "They like to laugh," Mira explained. "I only showed them something silly." The Empress smiled. "You gave them something no other sitter thought to give. You gave them laughter." At that moment, Mira decided to make the dragons laugh even more. She put the crayons aside and stood up. She puffed out her cheeks, crossed her eyes, and let out a funny squeaky sound. The dragons froze for a second, surprised. Then, all at once, they burst into giggles again. Their wings flapped with joy, and sparks of light filled the nursery like tiny stars. Encouraged, Mira pretended to sneeze. Instead of a normal sneeze, she made it sound like a trumpet. The dragons laughed so hard they rolled across the floor. One of them even tried to copy the sound, sneezing in a high squeak that made the others laugh even harder. The nursery became brighter and brighter with their joy. The sparks from the dragon's scales drifted like fireflies, making the room glow in soft colors. The Empress watched in wonder, her heart warming at the sight. She whispered to one of her advisors nearby, "Do you see? My children are not frightening. They only needed someone who could understand their hearts." The advisor nodded, still astonished. "It seems the human child has done what none of us could." Mira soon sat down again, a little out of breath from all the giggling. The dragons crowded around her, snuggling close. The silver dragon climbed into her lap. The golden one curled at her side. The green one stretched across her legs, and the blue one rested behind her back. Mira felt warm and safe, as though she had always belonged there. "You are good friends," Mira said softly, patting their heads one by one. "If you laugh every day, you will never be lonely." The dragons hummed happily, their eyelids drooping as if they were getting sleepy. The nursery, once known for noise and chaos, was now peaceful. Even the toys scattered around seemed calmer, waiting quietly. The Empress stepped closer and gently placed her hand on Mira's shoulder. "You have given me a gift more precious than gold or gems. You have given peace to my children." Mira looked up at her and smiled. It was not hard. They only wanted someone to play with. The Empress felt her eyes grow warm. She realized then that all the skilled babysitters had come with plans, rules, and methods. But Mira had come with crayons, toys, and laughter. That simple difference had changed everything. Later, when the dragons finally drifted to sleep in a soft pile around Mira, the Empress covered them with blankets of cloud fabric. She whispered, "Rest, my treasures. Tomorrow will bring more laughter." Mira yawned and leaned against the silver dragon, who purred softly in its sleep. She too felt ready to close her eyes. She knew that she would return tomorrow with more silly ideas, more drawings, and more games, and she was certain the dragons would laugh again. For the first time since they had hatched, the Crystal Palace was filled not with worry but with joy. The sound of Giggle still echoed faintly in the halls, carrying hope to every corner of the Empress's world. The news of the baby dragon's laughter spread quickly throughout the palace. For many days the halls had been quiet with worry, and even the grand guards had spoken in whispers about the restless children. But now laughter had returned. The small sounds of giggles and cheerful hums traveled like warm sunlight, reaching every corner of the Crystal Palace. Mira continued her games in the nursery. She had learned that each dragon had a favorite activity. The silver dragon loved to chase the small cloth ball. The golden dragon liked drawing shapes in the clouds with its tail. The green dragon adored looking at Mira's silly pictures, and the blue dragon enjoyed curling up beside her while she told stories in a soft voice. As Mira played, the doors of the nursery opened quietly. Curious servants and guards peeked inside. They had never seen anything like this before. Instead of wild roars and smoke, the dragons were calm, playful, and joyful. They rolled on the floor, nudged the ball to Mira, and made happy little sounds. Some of the palace staff whispered to each other, amazed that a single human child had changed the nursery so completely. The Empress herself walked slowly toward the room, her long gown gliding over the shining floors. She smiled as she watched Mira pretend to sneeze loudly, which made the dragons laugh until their wings flapped and sparks floated through the air. One of the guards shook his head in disbelief. "I have never seen dragons like this," he whispered. Mira noticed the Empress and waved happily. "They like to laugh," she said. "They only needed someone to play with." The Empress nodded. "You have given them joy, and you have given the palace joy as well." Mira clapped her hands. "Do you want to play too?" she asked. The Empress laughed softly. She did not usually join games in the nursery, but she could see that her children were happy, safe, and calm. She knelt on the soft floor, careful not to disturb them. "Yes," she said. "I would like to play." Mira handed her a crayon. Together, they drew funny pictures of dragons with hats that were far too big, wings tangled in ribbons and tails wrapped around small stars. The baby dragons chirped and hummed with delight. One of them even picked up a drawing with its tiny claw and tried to copy it, making everyone laugh at its attempt. The laughter in the nursery did not stay there. It spilled into the palace halls. Servants who had once walked carefully in fear of a sudden roar now smiled as they heard the cheerful sounds. Even the palace cooks peeked from the kitchen windows, their tired faces brightening as they saw dragons rolling and giggling on the soft clouds. The Empress noticed that her advisors were also watching. They had expected the nursery to be a place of chaos, but now they saw calm and joy. Some of them shook their heads in wonder, while others quietly applauded Mira's efforts. The next day, the dragons grew more confident. They followed Mira around the nursery, copying her drawings, rolling the ball, and even making tiny, sparkling fireworks from their scales. They no longer seemed frightened by anyone's presence. The palace staff, who had been nervous around the dragons for so long, began to relax. They realized that the dragons were not dangerous. They were simply children with energy, curiosity, and a need for friendship. The Empress walked through the halls, smiling at everyone she met. She felt proud that her children were now happy and safe. She called her guards closer. "See what patience and kindness can do," she said softly. "Even creatures as mighty as my dragons respond to care and friendship." Mira continued to draw and play. She discovered that the dragons loved music, so she began to hum small tunes while drawing. The dragons chirped along, making cheerful sounds that created a soft melody in the nursery. Even the Empress could not resist tapping her fingers in time with the music. By evening, the palace was filled with a new kind of energy. The halls no longer echoed with fear or tension. Instead, laughter, cheerful hums, and happy whispers carried through every tower and bridge. The dragons snuggled in their soft cloud beds, tired but content. Mira sat among them, smiling as she watched the soft sparks fade and their eyes grow heavy. The Empress knelt beside Mira and whispered, "You have given me more than joy. You have shown me that even the smallest friend can bring happiness to the greatest palace." Mira smiled and patted the dragons. "They only needed someone who believed in them," she said softly. As the night fell, the palace glowed not only from crystal walls, but from the happiness that had spread everywhere. The laughter of dragons and the gentle smiles of humans and aliens alike created a warmth that touched every corner. For the first time in many days, the Empress felt that her palace was truly alive with love, joy, and friendship. The palace of crystal, once quiet with worry, now sparkled with happiness. And at the heart of it all was a small human girl who had simply believed in the power of laughter. The morning sun touched the crystal palace, making it glow with colors that danced across every tower and bridge. Mira woke in the nursery surrounded by the baby dragons, all of them stretching their wings and blinking sleepily. The silver dragon nuzzled her shoulder. The golden one rolled onto its back. The green one curled its tail around her legs, and the blue one hummed softly beside her. Mira smiled and whispered, "Good morning, friends. Are you ready for more fun today?" The dragons chirped happily, their tiny sparks floating gently in the air. Mira reached for her basket, pulling out paper, crayons, and a few small toys. The dragons had already learned to wait patiently, knowing that playtime with Mira was always full of laughter. The Empress entered the nursery quietly. She had been watching the palace from the balcony, seeing the joy spread throughout the halls. Servants, guards, and advisors all moved with lighter steps, their smiles brighter than before. The Empress had never felt such peace in her palace. "Mira," she said softly, "your visit has changed everything. My children are joyful, and the palace is alive with happiness because of you." Mira looked up at the Empress. It was easy. They only needed someone to be their friend, she said with a small smile. The Empress knelt beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Friendship is a powerful gift," she said. "You have given more than anyone could imagine. I want you to return often, not as a sitter, but as a guest of honor in our palace." Mira's eyes widened in surprise. She had not expected this honor. She had only wanted to help the dragons laugh. "I would like that," she said softly. The dragons seemed to understand the importance of the moment. They chirped, rolled, and flapped their wings in excitement. The silver dragon jumped onto Mira's lap, purring softly. The golden dragon nudged her hand with its tiny snout. The green dragon brought a ball and dropped it at her feet. The blue dragon curled its tail gently around her back. The Empress watched, her heart full. "You see," she whispered to her advisors, "even the smallest heart can bring the greatest joy. Mira has shown us that care, patience, and laughter are the most important gifts we can give." Mira began drawing again. This time she drew all 4 dragons together, each one laughing and playing. She added the Empress in the picture, with a crown so big it touched the stars. The dragons watched her work, their eyes wide and sparkling. When she finished, she showed the picture to them. The dragons squeaked in delight. The silver dragon tapped the paper with its claw. The golden one tried to copy the shapes with its tail. The green one rolled the ball over the drawing, and the blue one hummed in approval. Mira laughed, clapping her hands. The nursery was alive with happiness once more. The Empress knelt beside Mira and said, "This picture will hang in the grand hall. It will remind everyone that laughter and friendship are treasures that even the greatest rulers cannot achieve without kindness." Mira beamed. "I only did what felt right," she said. "I wanted them to be happy." The Empress looked at her children, now calm and joyful. She realized that the dragons' hearts had opened because someone had believed in them. No magic, no rules, and no special training had been needed. Only a human child with a gentle heart had been enough. As the day went on, Mira played more games with the dragons. She taught them simple songs, showed them new drawings, and laughed at every silly thing they did. The dragons had learned to trust her, and she had learned the joy of caring for friends very different from herself. By evening, the nursery grew quiet. The dragons curled around Mira, tired but happy. She patted each one gently. "Good night, my friends. We will play again tomorrow," she whispered. The Empress stood at the doorway watching the scene. She knew that Mira had done something extraordinary. She had brought laughter, calm, and love into the lives of the dragons and into the heart of the palace itself. The Empress knelt and whispered softly to Mira, "You have given me a gift that cannot be measured. You have shown that kindness and joy can conquer fear and worry. I'm grateful, and so are my children." Mira smiled sleepily. "I am happy too," she said. Because they laughed. The dragons closed their eyes, safe and calm. Mira rested beside them, knowing that she had found a place in their hearts. The palace glowed with soft light, the halls echoing with the memory of laughter and joy. Even the guards and advisors who had once feared the dragons now felt hope and happiness. The Empress whispered one last thought as she left the nursery, her heart at peace. "In the smallest friend we have found the greatest treasure. Tomorrow, and every day after, The laughter of my children will remind us that love and friendship are stronger than fear. Mira slept soundly, surrounded by dragons who had once frightened every alien babysitter. They now purred and hummed softly, a family bound not only by scales and wings but by laughter, care, and friendship. The crystal palace, shining brighter than ever, held a promise that happiness could be found in the most unexpected places. The galaxy outside sparkled, and inside the Empress's treasures slept, knowing that with friends like Mira, their hearts would always be full of joy.